So the House finally passed a resolution condemning hatred. This was supposed to be coming from comments that freshman representative from the Democratic Party, Ilhan Omar, made. Comments she made that were supposedly anti-Semitic. So for those of you who haven't been following, here was the story of what led up to today's resolution. You had Ilhan Omar 3 times be condemned by people on the left and the right for making comments that were supposedly anti-Semitic. Now, I'm not going to get into whether each one of these comments were anti-Semitic or just anti-Israel, but suffice it to say, with her connections and the fact she keeps saying things like this and then apologizing and then says something the next week, it shows that there's maybe a pattern of her not just being against the Israeli state, but being against Jews in general, because she's saying a lot of things that are stereotypes about Jews, like them having money and buying influence. I don't really care. I'm not going to get into the specifics of that. What I want to talk about is the resolution that ultimately passed. So you see a lot of people on the right correctly saying this was a cop-out by the Democrats, because instead of just saying, yes, this anti-Semitism is bad, what they instead did was say all kinds of bigotry is wrong. So on face value, you're like, oh, okay, we can see what they're doing. They're trying to shirk responsibility and just say all bigotry is wrong. So let's talk about why that's dumb. This is the minor point that I'm trying to make in this video. Remember, the Democrats, anytime a Republican or someone that's supposedly on the right does something terrible, they demand that that be condemned. So when Steve King came out and said, I don't understand what's wrong with the term white supremacy, the Republicans kicked him off all the committees and then passed a resolution condemning his specific comments. That's what the Democrats wanted. When a Democrat supposedly says something anti-Semitic, instead of that, they say, oh, we condemn all hatred, even though that's not what they really said, which we'll get to in a minute. But do you see the double standard here? This is the same as when someone who was considered to be on the right wing shot Congressman Gifford. Bernie Sanders came out and said, when will the right condemn violence coming on their side? When will they do this? The right needs to stand up and say that this is unduly violent. Okay, fine. But then when a Bernie Sanders supporter goes out and shoots Steve Scalise and had a bunch of other Republicans on a ball field, did Bernie say, oh, we're just going to condemn my supporters? No, they condemned all violence. And Pelosi even threw a fit when someone had dared to ask her, do you think this is coming from Democrats, from your rhetoric? Do you think that? I said, how dare you? She said, of course not. This is a constant pattern. When Democrats or someone that leans left does something, it's, oh, well, we need to condemn all forms of violence. When someone perceived on the right it's we have to call out just specifically the right. So what we see with this resolution is you have an Islamic freshman member of the Democratic Party in Congress supposedly saying things that are anti-Semitic, and the resolution condemning that turns into, we condemn all anti-Semitism and all anti-Islamophobia and all bigotry, etc., which just shows that it's kind of a cop-out. That's the minor point I want to make. The major point, which I don't hear anyone talking about, is, okay, even if they said condemn all forms of bigotry, that would at least be able to be taken with the, you could swallow that pill. But they didn't even do that, because if you look at the resolution, let's see like the crucial part in the resolution, what it says. So it condemns Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. And then we get to this passage. Whereas white supremacists in the United States have exploited and continue to exploit bigotry and weaponize hate for political gain, targeting traditionally persecuted peoples, including African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders and other people of color, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, and the LGBTQ community, immigrants, and others with verbal attacks, incitement, and violence. Now, wait a minute. What? So it's just, oh, those evil white supremacists. Notice it doesn't say white people being attacked there or men being attacked. You see, this is just more cultural Marxism in disguise. They lump everyone as groups. You're a group based on your race. You're a group based on your gender. If you're white, if you're in some of these groups, they're oppressor groups. If you're in the other groups, you're oppressed groups. That's why we could constantly see the drumbeat of white people bad, men bad, straight people bad, Christians bad. Notice those groups, which the hatred of them has been on the rise. Notice they're not included. We're not saying bigotry against them is bad. No, we specifically say it's just these certain groups that bigotry is bad against, and we'll sign a resolution condemning that type of bigotry. How hard would it have been to just have this resolution say, we condemn all bigotry of any kinds against any people for immutable characteristics such as their race, gender, or things like their religion or their class, etc.? Why couldn't they have done that? No, they had to specify. They had to get their cultural Marxism and identity politics in there. And what's really frustrating is you see someone like, there's people I really support on the right that are strong against these anti-Semitic claims that you see Ilhan Omar making, yet they're basically don't have a problem when people make general claims about men being bad, or about white people being bad, or about Christians being bad. For some reason, they're really focused on when Jews are attacked, which is fine. We should condemn all forms of bigotry against anyone. But it comes off as, And I understand that the hatred against Jews historically has been really bad, just like it's been bad against blacks, just like it's been bad against gays, etc. But when we say, oh, well, those are the forms of hatred we need to focus on, and we could forgive the other, we could forgive the anti-white racism, or we could forgive misandry against men, and just act like that isn't a problem, even when we're passing resolutions condemning all hate, when we do that, it allows this kind of narrative to continue. And so what do we see as a result of this narrative? Things like, oh, a bunch of black racists yelling at kids for wearing MAGA hats is okay. We don't have to focus on those racists. Or when a Native American defends those black racists and those kids get death threats, no problem. Or we see a black actor like Jussie Smollett try to besmirch white people and all Trump supporters by saying, oh, they're evil, they came at me, and spinning this narrative that we find out's a lie. We constantly see Trump people attacked. We see people attacked for the color of their skin that are white. We see men being attacked. If it used to be, you heard these claims that people would make, well, you can't be racist unless you have institutions of power on your side. This is garbage. Anyone can be racist no matter how much power they have. If you hate people for immutable characteristics such as race, based solely on that race, then you're a racist. If you hate people for immutable characteristics such as their gender, then you're a bigot. Or you're a misandrist or a misogynist, depending on what side that gets. You see what I mean? But if we are to take the argument of institutional power seriously, what institutions of power push things like white racial supremacy or white racial identitarian politics? None. Yet we see that constantly on other groups. That's why we can have actual majors in academia directed towards whiteness being bad, the patriarchy or men being bad, etc. Toxic masculinity. We could talk about that stuff all the time. I don't care. I think all forms of bigotry are bad. That's my point. I don't want them to specifically identify, oh, and hatred against white people, we need to, that's a unique problem. Or hatred against men's a unique problem. Or hatred against Christianity is a unique problem. That hatred all exists is all I'm saying. So if you're going to condemn all hatred, you would include that in this resolution that's supposed to include hatred, condemning all hatred and bigotry. But they don't. And even right-wing people don't talk about it. It's only a problem if it's some sort of minority group. So we could condemn anti-Semitism. We could condemn Islamophobia, as we should. Anyone who's bigoted or racist to those groups based on their skin color, their religion, their ethnicity, their gender, all of that should be condemned. But we shouldn't stop and say, oh, but we're just going to kind of ignore. If there's a group that's a majoritarian group like white people, then it's okay to, or even men that are actually technically a minority in this country, because there's, a percentage point more women than men. It's okay. We don't have to specifically say that hatred against them based on their gender needs to be condemned. That's ridiculous. And we see that this identitarian politics is, again, in academia. We see in the entertainment industry. We see where it's popular to say, we don't want white males watching this movie. We don't care about white males. We don't care that there's suicide rates going up. We don't care that the fact that, men have incredible difficulties getting custody of children in family courts. None of that matters. We'll still hate on men. We'll still hate on white people. All that's okay. We don't need to focus on that. We just need to condemn all bigotry, but that doesn't include white people or men or Christians or straight people, etc. This is ridiculous. This resolution is garbage. And I haven't seen anyone call this out, even on the right. They're focusing on of course, they had to cover up the anti-Semitism by saying all this other stuff, which is true. That's a valid criticism. I'm with them there. But the fact that we constantly allow, even the outrage of the anti-Semitic comments, which there deserves to be outrage if there's anti-Semitism. But we constantly hear from the Democratic Party and some of these exact same Democrats how men are terrible, how white people are terrible, how Christians are terrible. And there's never a condemnation of that. We just had people on the floor in the Senate, I believe who was it? Kamala Harris, that was questioning whether someone who is a Catholic could do their job on a court or in a position in the cabinet because of their Catholicism. Where's the condemnation of that hatred? Where's the resolution condemning that hatred? I'm just so sick and tired of this identity politics. Bigotry is bad, period. Racism is bad, period. We don't get to focus on a resolution like, oh, we're condemning all that racism and bigotry, but only if it's non-white people. Only if we're going to just include, white racists have done terrible things to minorities. That's all we're going to focus on. We'll wash over the fact that there's all sorts of racism directed to white people. We'll wash over the fact there's all sorts of hatred directed at men. We'll wash over that there's all sorts of hatred directed towards Christians. None of that in this bill, is there? Even though recent studies have showed worldwide Christians are actually becoming one of the most persecuted religions. But where's the condemnation of that? No problem. No problem. We don't have to focus on that. And these same Democrats are the people that flipped out under the Black Lives Matter narrative, right? That's based on this lie that cops are targeting black people in undue numbers. It's a lie. right? That's not happening. But when people said, no, 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 all lives matter, they were outraged. All lives matter is just you covering up saying really black lives don't matter. But then when there's charges of anti-Semitism, they say, no, 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 but also Islamophobia and also racism against blacks and Hispanics and Hindus and Sikhs and the LGBT and all these other groups. But that's not them whitewashing for the anti-Semitism. And even that situation, at least they didn't go from Black Lives Matter to white lives also matter. It wasn't that. It was all lives matter. Doesn't matter your race. It doesn't matter your ethnicity. This, they're saying, no, we condemn all bigotry, but we'll specifically outline we're not really talking about all bigotry because we know the Democratic Party is okay with hatred against the oppressor groups because they're cultural Marxists. So they have no problem slandering white people. They have no problem slandering straight people. They have no problem slandering Christians. They have no problem slandering men because those groups are all oppressors. So it's okay to slander all of those groups. That's why in even a resolution where they're trying to skirt responsibility for people that are supposedly anti-Semitic in their party, they still can't get it right. They still can't even stomach to just say in a showboating resolution. They can't even in that stomach to be like, oh yeah, and racism against white people is bad. And, you know, being misandrist against men is bad. They can't do it. Because that's what they truly believe. And so this resolution was crap. If I was in Congress, I wouldn't have signed it. It's clearly just something to skirt blame from kind of bigotry in their own party. And they show even more bigotry by the groups they don't include. I would like to see more Republicans in Congress step up and say, if we're going to condemn all bigotry, then we condemn all bigotry. Let's stop pretending it can only come from white men. I'm sick and tired of it. And until these identitarian politics games stop, again, I'm not just saying, oh, because I'm a white man, that's what I want to see happen. No, I don't care. The actual specifics of it don't matter to me. I'm just saying all bigotry is wrong and should be condemned. That's it. You don't leave certain groups out because you think they deserve it or you don't think it's worth mentioning. And if you do, then you're showing your true colors that you don't actually care about ending all bigotry. So if you like this video, I know I got a little fired up there. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. I'll be doing a live stream around noon tomorrow, so check that out. And I'll be putting more material up daily. So, all right, everyone, thanks, and have a good one.